So I know the online audience as well has been growing steadily this morning. We've had lots of people from yesterday who perhaps didn't plan to be here physically, but they've definitely decided to be with us online as well, so we say hi to them. Our next session is going to be driving blockchain innovation in a trust economy. Eugene, of course, is going to be the moderator. Well, he's going to be on stage as one of the speakers. We'd like to invite the rest of the panel on stage, please. Chia, Hock, Co-Chairman, Blockchain Association Singapore. Barry Lim, Principal Delivery Manager, Governing Government Digital Services at GovTech. Bernard Chong, Senior Director, Intelligent Technology and Group. Yep. And of course, your moderator will be David Chin, the Deputy CEO at CIO Academy. So I'll give you your panel. Would you please welcome them in a round of applause?
Hi, morning everybody. That was a very insightful 45 minutes from you, Eugene. And of course, earlier we heard from Derek. I think we have all had a morning full of use cases around blockchain. And I'm so glad today to be doing this panel. It is the first time in our history at CIO Academy that we are doing such a comprehensive program on blockchain innovation. So excited to have all of you here. And the topic for today is driving blockchain innovation in a trust economy. I think the keyword today, we can all agree, is trust and how we can use blockchain to achieve that. So Eugene, I know you've had 45 minutes of airtime and we all have one burning question on our mind. In the last 45 minutes, with all the use cases you have mentioned, the question is, how do I get started? Many of us are tech leaders of large companies, right? So the question is, there is a lot of consumer hype, but what are some use cases in the B2B marketplace, and how can companies get started on this journey? Go ahead, Eugene.
It's a very good question, David. And there are a lot of blockchain companies and products out there. So easily to get started is to understand, first of all, what you're trying to solve, right? From a problem perspective. Blockchain is a technology. You don't try to force fit the technology into a problem. You understand what problems you have, and perhaps by understanding some of these fundamentals of blockchain technology, you can see how you can leverage on it. Again, there are a lot of products, a lot of companies doing blockchain today. Even on the public space, there's public chains, public blockchain projects that you can leverage on. For example, back to the whole decentralized finance space. If I want to, perhaps invest my money, I would convert it to USDT, which is a stable coin. I will put it onto Compound, earn 8% to 10% per annum interest, because it's better than keeping my dollar right now in the bank, which earns me about 1.5%. In a fixed deposit, right? So that's just some ways, and organizations can do that as well in order to, get a stable growth of the cash that they have in their bank, right? There are a lot of available options out there for companies. It's just about researching, it's about understanding, but most importantly, it's about understanding what problem you're trying to solve.
Great. So, in fact, earlier in your presentation, there is one question about the fact that, as a tech leader, how can you justify building new contracts, business processes, new supply chain relationships on blockchain instead of on existing technologies? How do you communicate the cost benefit, the productivity benefit? Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I think in the end, it's just another project that you need to, understand what the business outcome, the business value is from this project that you're embarking on, right? It's cost-benefit analysis, and every business leader needs to be able to show the benefits that come out from the cost invested. So you just take it as though blockchain is another project that you're embarking on. But fundamentally, you need to understand what's the differentiating factors between blockchain technology that can help you versus what you have existing. Again, back to the whole, traceability. For example, in your organization, you have log files, you have audit trails. The problem with these audit trails and log files that you have that are stored in your databases today is the fact that if I have access to your database, I can just change it, right? And you might not know, right? I can clean up my tracks as a hacker. And this is where blockchain can really help you internally by creating that immutability in your whole audit process. Right? And that's just one example of how you can leverage on blockchain to enhance your security posture, to enhance your audit capabilities in your organization. And there are many, many other ways as well where companies can come in. But most importantly, again, back to the fact that it's cost benefit, right? If the cost outweighs the benefit, it's something that you shouldn't do.
Thanks, Eugene. And you have set up your answer very nicely for Bernard. Bernard, you represent N-Chain from N Group. And the question for you is, right, what are companies doing now then to develop their roadmap in blockchain innovation? Would you care to share? No, the mic is not working. You want to switch it on? Yeah.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's good. Yeah.
So what are the companies doing? Interestingly, I think that there are probably perception that the large enterprises, the more forward-looking companies are looking to blockchain, but that's not the case. In fact, we are also talking to many, SMEs, smaller size companies. They feel that blockchain is a differentiating factor for their products and services. They are developing solutions on blockchain so that they can differentiate themselves in the market. In fact, some of them believe that it will also help them in terms of the corporate profile and their valuation as well. So, for example, in the area of traceability, providing traceability as a service for raw materials, for example, for fabric. One of the company that we work with, in fact, they trace the original where that fabric comes from, and it does help consumers today, who are very discerning, to select the type of materials that they want to buy from, right? There are also companies providing traceability, for example, for seafood. So that as when you buy your crab in Singapore, your favorite, chili, you want to cook your chili crab, how was it stored, where is it from, and all the the temperature that it was transported, right, to the market. So all this information is very important, and companies are really leveraging on blockchain technologies. For some of the, I guess, the larger enterprises, we see probably a lot more in the supply chain side of things, because blockchain has the ability to have that audit trail. So, for example, we have developed the electronic bill of lading, so that all the logistical data is available, right? And this is where then financial services company will come in. To provide their service, be it insurance services or credit, to companies who are doing cross-border trading.
Thanks, Bernard. The one thing I took away from your sharing is that trust is now a massive competitive edge, right? And that's where I come to you now, Barry. Barry, you represent GovTech. The government is definitely a trusted organization, or so we hope. Yeah. So, question to you is, what is the government's experience with blockchain technology, and what are some use cases?
Right. Hello?
There you go. Yes?
Okay, yeah. So, I think we have come quite a long way, right, with blockchain. We have implemented several initiatives since back in 2017, right? I think one of the first initiatives that we had was a collaboration with Ngee Polytechnic, right? Where they were trying to increase their operational efficiencies in the areas of certificate verifications and also in terms of replacement of lost or damaged certificates, right? And we thought that blockchain was the way to go, right? In this case, where we totally changed the way that certificates are being issued, right? In a digital fashion and in the way that it was being verified, right? So by using blockchain, we could issue these document hashes onto the blockchain, which then provided a means to verify these documents, right, against a record that is anchored within the decentralized network, right? So let me give you an example, right, on how this totally changes how things are done. Right, in the good old days, a job applicant, let's say, would submit, right, photocopies of their documents, of their education certificates to their prospective employers. Right? Prospective employers would then need to, either make a call to the issuing organization or send an email to validate these documents' authenticity. Right? This is very time-consuming and it's a manual process. Right? But with open certs, then what could happen now is that these job applicants could actually just email a copy of this open cert document, right? And instead of having to, the prospective job employer having to contact the issuing organization, they could go through a trusted portal, open certs portal, right? Upload the file and immediately find out if a document had been tampered with, right? And if it's not tampered with, then you can proceed to validate the contents within the open cert credential, right? So that was very successful. We rolled it out in 2019, right? And subsequently, we also have moved on to other applications, for example, in the maritime trade sector, where we also look into issuance of EBLs, right? And I think there we wanted to provide a platform, right, where we have issuance mechanism that is compliance to international standards like Electronic Transaction Act, for example, right? So any adopters of this technology would then simply just take all these open source components that we built, right? And then to incorporate into their own systems and be assured that it's also in compliance with the international standards. Yeah.
Thanks, Barry. Can the same partnership models, right, from what you've shared, be applied for governments or Singapore government to build blockchain projects that the private sector could participate in? Right? You have done it with schools. Can that expand to private sector, for example, banks, restaurant associations, to be part of such provenance projects?
Yes, for sure, right? So with the open source project and more recently the health source project, it was designed specifically as such, right? Meaning to say that the technology is open source, right? There are organizations who are well-versed in blockchain, right? And these organizations can take this technology and help, right? For example, an institute of higher learning or a clinic issue documents which have been anchored onto the blockchain, right? So it's an ecosystem actually, right? There is the service provider to issue these documents, and there are the issuer organizations who want their documents to be issued, but they do not necessarily need to know or to have the know-how, right? But they just need to be connected to the correct service providers. Yeah.
Thanks, Barry. Now I move on to Hock Lai. Hock Lai, you represent the Blockchain Association in Singapore. We all know that getting on board blockchain is not a one-man, one-company effort. It requires concerted effort within the supply chain. What are some initiatives in the association that helps to catalyze adoption and innovation in blockchain?
I think awareness is very important. Like recently, we actually conducted a non-fungible token charity auction with NTUC UCare Fund, and using that to raise awareness about non-fungible token and indirectly on blockchain. We actually raised $400,000, so you know where the money is now. We also do a lot of training program. For example, we collaborated with Singapore Poly last year with the SG United Skills Training Program. So the learners went through 12 months program and pick up blockchain coding skills. Interestingly, the median age of these learners are 43 years old. So you can see that this is a very meaningful project. And we also struck up a lot of partnerships with many organizations. For example, yesterday, we signed an MOU with Huawei Cloud on how to use the cloud technology to help to accelerate the adoption of blockchain, because one of the challenges of blockchain adoption is that it is very time-consuming to configure your blockchain system, especially you need to create multiple nodes. Through the use of blockchain as a service, you could, an enterprise could easily adopt blockchain rapidly. And also, yesterday, we also inked another MOU with Nanyang Technological University with their Energy Research Institute, because in the area of energy, right, through the use of blockchain technology, you can facilitate peer-to-peer energy trading, because nowadays there are a lot of households or even small organizations that are generating their own energy through the use of, for example, solar panels. And very often they generate more electricity than they require. And through the use of peer-to-peer energy trading, they are able to monetize some of this excess energy. So we're also looking at creating trading platforms for renewable energy certificates to contribute to climate change. So these are some of the initiatives that we are doing.
Great, thanks, Hock. Now with blockchain, seems like everybody can become their own Singapore power. So Eugene, back to you. I'm going to challenge you a little bit to demystify how organizations can get started. Earlier in your slide, you shared the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, right? Do organizations need to have certain critical components in their tech environment before they can get started? I give an example. In proof of work, you talked about the need to have lots of compute infrastructure. Do you need that in your organization today? Can you demystify it for us?
It's a good question, and it always goes back to the idea of consensus. And if you understand the word consensus, it means to come to agreement. Right? In a bank, how do you get consensus in a bank? You basically have a couple of people who says, yes, I approve this transaction, and therefore you get consensus on a particular transaction. Right? So in order to understand how best to apply a consensus model to your organization, I've talked about proof of work and proof of stake. If you look at proof of work, you need GPU power. If you are looking at implementing a blockchain project for your own organization, I don't think you want to be running racks of GPU mining systems. So proof of work will likely not be the right consensus model for you. So there's only a few others that you can look at. Either you look at proof of stake, where you run maybe 10 nodes across your region, your data centers, and if all the 10 nodes agree that this transaction is valid, then you agree that this is valid. Or you can have proof of authority. Proof of authority means that you have 10 nodes, but at any one time, as long as 3 nodes say that I approve this transaction, it is approved. Right? So there are different models of consensus that you can decide to implement in your organization, and you probably want to implement the most cost-effective one. Yeah. So definitely not proof of work.
That's great. And Bernard, on to you. Building on what Eugene shared, what are some of the critical factors for blockchain projects to be successful in organizations?
I think where we see the the key success factor is really leveraging on the whole partner ecosystem, because there are many use cases for blockchain, right? And as we speak, currently we have over 50 applications globally, but there are a lot more. There'll be hundreds coming, and it's across all industries. So it's important to leverage on the entire partner ecosystem. So today we have also a partner ecosystem that we can leverage on to develop solutions for our customers. So just as I speak earlier, right? We talk about supply chain, for example. Today, if I want to be an entrepreneur, right? I want to start to maybe develop some solutions or products in Singapore. I need to get a supplier from China. I have to go through a few hurdles. For example, the letter of credit. I may have to, do a kind of a risk rating check on my supplier. I have to talk to my banks for, loans. So there's that entire ecosystem that I'm not familiar with, and there's no trust in the system. Going back to trust. Now there's an option, right? All I need to do is I just need to open a DBS account. So I'm doing a bit of advertisement for our local bank. And just open a SME ID account, and I can get onto this Trustper, for example, and do a credit risk check on the supplier, and then, negotiate on, what is the quantity of the products that's coming in. And then at the same time, DBS is quite willing to extend me some financial, services, right? For example, be insurance or credit, because everything is based on trust, right? So when you deal with a lot of intermediaries, a lot of entities, and when there's no trust in the system, there's a lot of hurdles, there's a lot of costs involved, right? So the key thing for companies to really be successful is look at, your operational efficiencies and all your inefficiencies, right? Are there many intermediaries involved? And how do you then leverage on blockchain to develop trust so that you can start to be more efficient and you can take cost out?
Thanks, Bernard. I'm going to come back to you on that point of looking at the entire business, but I'll just jump on to Barry first. Now, Barry, I'm sure with the several blockchain projects that you mentioned, it is a private blockchain that's created by the government, or do you use some kind of a blockchain as a service to help you achieve some of your objectives?
Right. So what we're using is the public permissionless Ethereum network. Right. Reason for doing so is that we want to promote adoption of this technology. Right. Lower the barrier of entry. So with that, actually, selecting Ethereum was one of the key decisions that we made, right? To make sure that all the different interested parties are able to participate easily, right? Because this technology, as we all know, is beyond geographies, right? So, and this technology should not be just limited to, let's say, within Singapore, right? So doing so, we allow participants of our open attestation technology to be used both locally and overseas. So for the case of, say, OpenCert, Spectre OpenCert helps us again. We do have issuers who are operating both inside and outside of Singapore, right? And in the sense, that's what we call a decentralized issuance. So we do have different issuers operating from different geographies. And yet we are able to then centrally, right, in a way, to verify these documents on a centralized verifier, right? So to give assurance that these documents indeed have been issued with the correct credentials by the correct identities. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Barry. I'm going to cover a touchy subject, and Eugene, you mentioned it earlier. What you talked about the risks about government intervention, whether is it ban or the limitations in terms of use of certain blockchain or even cryptocurrency, right? We won't go into cryptocurrency, maybe focus on the blockchain protocol. Will some of these potential government legislation and laws affect blockchain projects, right? If you're an existing one, does it get affected? Does it get nullified? Go ahead, Eugene.
Okay, so to answer that question, as long as you're not going into cryptocurrency, I think you won't have a lot of the regulation problems right now. If you look at building just on blockchain, probably you're going to have some issues in terms of where you can put your nodes, especially for sensitive data which needs to reside within the sovereignty itself. So that's probably one of the considerations. But it's the same as doing cloud. It's probably the same challenges as well. Yeah.
There are definitely many similarities there, and it has to be baked into the entire project scope, the risk mitigating factors, existing laws, so that you don't hit any of these roadblocks along the way. Now, Hock Lai, something on a lighter note. I like what SM said earlier with his comment. When it comes to blockchain, people always want to know two things for the man on the street: how to make money from it and how to make money from it. Beyond that, what other areas in blockchain you wish Singapore citizens would explore further beyond just making money from it?
Yeah, because if you look at the whole blockchain space, right, this is how we categorize it. On one hand is digital assets, and part of digital assets is cryptocurrency, whereby this is where most people, men in the street are interested in. But the other side of digital assets are what we call asset-backed tokens. basically tokens backed by real-world assets. It could be real estate, but it could also be other, for example, other shares backed by shares, or even by commodities such as gold. So that is the part I think Singapore wants to develop further, because I think that is the side that will generate a lot of real economic activity. And then on the other side of digital assets is what we call as enterprise blockchain, which could drive efficiency and even changes the business model. For example, like since we are talking about trust, right? I think one way I would like to reframe it is that blockchain is actually digitalizing trust. Because like it's the most important characteristics is really to re-intermediate the intermediaries. Because if you look at the common use cases of blockchain, right, are actually use cases whereby there are many participants in the low trust environment, whereby the custody, whereby the chain of custody and the history of ownership are important, and the intermediaries are not adding much value or even adding too much cost and long delays to it. So you see use cases like IBM using blockchain for tracing the food. Walmart using IBM's blockchain to trace food from farm to table, so that when there is food poisoning, they can quickly identify where is the source within minutes, instead of a few days through the traditional way. On the other hand, in the area of like supply chain finance, for example, we have companies that are doing what we call as a multi-tier supply chain, because, for example, in the construction scenario, right, the main contractor usually have very good credit rating. They could easily get loans at like 2% interest rate. But the downstream suppliers, the subcontractors, they might not be able to get this kind of low interest rate. But worst, they might not be even able to get any loans from the banks, because the banks might not trust them, they are too small. But through the use of blockchain technology, all this can be traced. The small suppliers can leverage on the good credit rating on the main con and have access to cheap financing. So that actually strengthens the entire ecosystem and make the whole business model more sustainable. But having said that, one of the challenges that I see in this space is really that unless you are the likes of Walmart, you are the biggest fish, right? You can mandate all your suppliers to use that blockchain. Or you are the main con that the rest of your subcontractors will have to come on stream. So this is an area whereby there are still some challenges in getting people on board, because the value of a blockchain platform is really when there are many participants on it, so that that single source of truth is really a single source of truth.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Actually, what you said is very meaningful in a way that in the traditional trust economy, in a sense, people associate large trusted organizations as the source of trust, right? But now with a blockchain community that everybody is a part of, smaller, medium-sized participants can be accredited with the same level of trust because they have met the requirements on the chain. Now, Bernard, on to you. I like the analogy that Eugene pointed out earlier. It's very similar to how 5 years ago we moved into the cloud, right? So in blockchain, how can organizations start with small POCs and scale those POCs into full-fledged projects that they can commercialize in a large way? Would you care to share?
Sure. So, depending on the type of business you are in, definitely, we see there are a few areas. I mean, if you are in probably a, brick and mortar type of companies, right? Just for example, right? I mean, who drove here today or yesterday, right? You probably drove through a very big car park, right? And if you are operating a large car park like this, you may think that, hey, maybe I can fractionalize or tokenize, right, the car park, because what NFT can do for you is giving you that unique, identity of a parking lot, right? And you can actually then make it into a, asset-backed type of, NFT, for example, right? So this gives you an extra opportunity for you to, organize your financial efficiency within the company, right? So this gives you that extra, opportunity and revenue stream. Now, in other opportunities, we see for example, content, protection. As we see a lot of companies digitizing, more and more of your assets is going to be on digital, right? So I think yesterday we hear from MediaCorp how they are trying to protect their content, right? Because they spend a lot of effort developing their content, and then they will also want to monetize it. They also want to copyright protect it, right? So these are the areas where companies can actually leverage on blockchain technologies to not only protect but copyright their intellectual property. So an example that Derek have shared earlier is we are a sponsor of UEFA, for example. Obviously, a lot of their content is of high value, right? They want to protect their content, protect their intellectual property. So all the top scoring of Euro 2021 is embedded on our blockchain, right? And it does hold certain value, right? Because you see all this, the digital media, you probably see maybe 10, 20,000 copies, all right, of an image, of a video stream. But which one is the real one? Which one is the authentic catered one? So eventually, all this will hold value. And so depending on the company and the products and solutions you are offering, many opportunities for you to leverage on blockchain to improve your business efficiency and to drive new revenue stream.
Thanks, Bernard. Now, I'm sure the promise of blockchain is there, but so are the areas of potential challenges to arise. So Barry, I'm going to come back to you. As more and more organizations and individuals get involved with blockchain, you will run into issues like talent, shortage of infrastructure, resources. What are some potential challenges you see down the road as more and more people get into this technology?
Right. I think one of the key topics to be addressed is the area of identity, right? How do you know who are these people or organizations who are performing these transactions? So in certain contexts, you actually need to know specifically who you are transacting with. And who is issuing this identity? Is it from a trusted organization, for example? Right? Because the technology itself allows for anyone, right, to issue a, say, identity document to, or a representation of identity, right? But can you trust this organization doing the KYC? So I think this is going to be one of the key challenges, I think, coming up. Yeah. So unless it is in a private blockchain context where you kind of know already who are the participants, then that could be more straightforward. But possibly in the public blockchain context, then there needs to be some way to receive trusted credentials and then to use them to transact.
Yeah. So the anonymity feature in blockchain is a double-edged sword, right? Because then it has to be tagged to the right people, the right participants, the right issuers on the network.
Yep, that's right.
Great. Now, Eugene, there's a highly voted question here, and we just have time for probably a couple more questions. Question is this: investing in blockchain is a long-term strategy, costly in terms of skills, infrastructure, a little bit like what Barry mentioned. While transaction volume is low compared to conventional channels, when do you think organizations can expect to break even from their investments in the blockchain?
I think it really depends on your use case, right? And how much customization. Again, there are a lot of public chain projects that you can participate almost immediately with. So, the reason of costs as a reason of not participating in blockchain technology may not be a good excuse. But that being said, there are a lot of other enterprise projects. They may need bespoke development, and there could be a sizable cost to that. And of course, you have to figure out whether it makes sense for your organization and when does it make sense. But I think from my perspective and my analysis of this technological trend, I think it's something that's here to stay. I see it akin to what happened in 1990s with the internet. In the 1990s, there's a bunch of internet companies that came and left. Right, they were called the dot-com boom and bust. I think it's the same thing that happened in the whole blockchain ecosystem as well. Probably a couple of years ago when Bitcoin crashed, and it's now going up again. I think it's a technology that's here to stay. There's a lot of values underpinning this technology, and particularly, like as mentioned, it's digitizing trust, and companies would eventually have to get on board one way or another. And as people, even we would be leveraging on blockchain in our daily lives. So it's something that we expect will stay, and it's just a matter of when you get on board.
Thanks, Eugene. Now, there's a question that came up from the audience. I'll get Bernard to answer this. Bernard, very quick, 1 minute. One of the audience members is a supplier with a $20 million company supplying to healthcare companies, right? What are some use cases you can explore in blockchain? How can he get started?
Yeah, so definitely it will involve, I guess you're probably import and exporting out of Singapore. So it involves multiple countries, cross-border digital trade. In fact, this is one of the best use case for blockchain because it involves multiple entities, right? And you want financial services institutions to be on board. You want logistics to have, for example, a digital copy of your bill of lading. And you want trust in the system, right? So back to my earlier example, it's really not difficult. You just need to open a bank account, for example, with DBS, because they are already adopting Trustper, which is powered by N-Chain. And so depending on, who do you want to buy or sell with, right? First of all, you want to trust your counterparty, right? You can go into your account and you can do a credit risk check, right? Because you want to have trust when you either hand over goods or you hand over money. I think that's the first step. Second is, DBS would then already have the counterparty banks as well involved, right? And because it's a trusted system and you are talking about 20 million, I'm reading here, it's a big amount. You may want to have some form of, insurance services or some form of credit. Talk to the bank because all the data is trusted, all the data is private, and there's an audit trail to it. Financial institutions will be very open to provide you those services, right? So I would just start with that. You can do it in a matter of days versus in a matter of weeks, and you have to deal with multiple parties, if not for blockchain.
Thanks, Bernard. Now, we've got time for some closing statements. I'm going to start with Eugene. We've had a wonderful 2-hour workshop on blockchain. With all that aside, what is one piece of advice that you feel is most important the audience should take away today? Go ahead.
Now, the one piece of advice, again, is what I mentioned earlier, right? Blockchain is, in the end, a technology, and you need to understand whether the technology is useful in your particular use case or the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So just because you want to adopt blockchain doesn't mean that you have to force something out. If there is no use case that you see right now for your organization, then maybe now is not the time.
Yeah. Same question to you, Hock.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Eugene. So typically we say that blockchain is neither a hammer looking for a nail, nor a solution for all problems. There are specific use cases that it is particularly strong, especially use cases whereby there are multiple stakeholders, whereby the history of ownership is very important and the middleman is really not adding much value. But more importantly, I think because the blockchain is going to stay, I think it's important to start the journey, start with a small project, start with a baby step.
Yeah. Bernard?
So again, look at your business, right? What are your priorities? Have it on your 3-year digital transformation roadmap, because there are so many use cases for blockchain. There are many available ones already in the market. So once you can identify those, you can jump on the bandwagon fairly quickly. Now, if not, there'll be a lot of new use cases coming up. and do explore with your partner ecosystem, because they will then throw up a lot of ideas for you. Because even down to charity or organizations, right? There's a blockchain application for that as well, making sure that your donation reach the recipient directly with very few intermediary costs, right? So this is just another use case. So there are really a lot of use cases, but have it as part of your transformation roadmap, and talk to your partner ecosystem.
Go ahead, Barry.
I think it's particularly useful in areas where data provenance is a very important attribute that you want to have, right, to validate the data. And blockchain actually offers you the aspect of transparency, right? So if this data then needs to be inspected or audited by the masses, right, have confidence that it's not been tampered with, then I think those are very good use cases as well. Yep.
Thanks, Barry. Would you please give our panelists a wonderful round of applause? I'm sure all the insights today were very useful. Thank you so much, panelists. Yeah, and we are right on time. Thank you so much. Yeah, Joe, over to you. Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Shall we give our panel another big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen?